there, friends and sane persons. My name is Kyle. It's Wednesday, and that means it's time for yet another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. Wednesday Whimsy is, of course, a short show that I do every Wednesday evening where I talk about a board game topic, a top 10, or some other thing that happened to be on my mind. It's supposed to be whimsical, I guess. Anyway, so last week we talked about my quarterly countdown, my top games of the quarter. And while I was there, while I was talking about that, I started thinking about a game that I had talked about a little bit up toward the top of that list. And that game, I decided needed a little bit more in-depth discussion. It was, or is, Earth. There you go. Hopefully you can see that there. So Earth is a is a game about Earth. I mean, okay, fine. What's it about? Well, you're building an island, and the island is going to be a 4x4 square of cards, grid of cards, plus a couple other bonus cards that you kind of have that you start off with. And that's kind of what you're doing. You're building this island. You're trying to get everything all set, have things grow and work in an ecosystem that kind of grows and feeds off of itself. In actuality, what you're trying to do is score the most points through a variety of different ways. You can score for the cards you're able to play. You can score for certain goals. You can score for sprout cubes that you're able to put on cards. And these growth tokens, I don't know what to call them, that you put on cards. But ultimately, there's a variety of different ways to score, and you're trying to get the most points by the time the game is over. And the game will end when someone completes that 4x4 grid. So let's talk a little bit about the game, how it works, and I'll let you know what I think of it, what I think it's missing, and what I think it does well. Let's start with how does it work? So I'm going to flip over here to sharing screen here for a minute. I hope. You'd think I would be able to do this by now. But all right, share screen. There's the button. So I'm going to come over here, and here's a picture kind of the game midway, two sort of thirds of the way through. You can see it right there. So what you have in Earth is you have a hand of these cards. And each card has a couple of different features on it. It has a cost. That's the cost in soil to play the card. It has a point value. That's how many points you'll get for that card at the end of the game. In most cases, there's not an easy way to remove things from the game. So once you've played it, for the most part, it's there. It also has a type. Every card will have one or more different types of plant that it is. All the cards you're playing are plants and landscapes. There are animals, but we'll talk about them in a moment. It also has an amount of growth that it can be, and there's sort of the maximum number of tokens. It looks like this particular one is in violation of the rules because it should only have 3 growth tokens, but it looks like it has 4. And then if it's complete at the end of the game, that's how many points you'll get for it. Otherwise, each growth token's worth a point. And you just put this cap on when it's all finished. And then it has room for these cubes. These cubes are also worth points, and some sort of special ability that it can trigger at different points in the game. For example, this one will trigger whenever someone does a blue action, yellow action, or red action. And then there's some flavor text there at the bottom. And you'll see most of the cards are these plants, and then there are also these landscapes. And the landscape, I guess there's another feature we didn't have, is sort of the climate that this thing likes. The landscapes often will have different scoring abilities or other special abilities that come into play at various points in the game. For example, this one, you're going to get 3 points for every one of these landscape cards that you happen to have on your island. So that's kind of how it works. On your turn, let's see if we can zoom in. Oops, let's go over here. On your turn, what you're going to do is select one of these different actions. There's 4 different actions in the game. You can select the green, and they have names. I think it's grow or planting, composting, watering and growing or something like that. But the yellow action, the red action, the blue action, and the green action are what they are. You're going to select an action. You will do the top part, and then everyone else will at the same time do the bottom part. And then you're going to activate any abilities in your tableau over here that match the color of the action you selected. So first you do the action, then you activate the abilities, and you activate them kind of like you would read a book in English, top to bottom, left to right. So you'd go over here, if I chose the blue action, I'd be able to activate this, skip this one, activate this one, and so on. And everyone always gets to activate all of their actions, regardless of whether you're the person who chose it or it just happened to have been chosen for you. After you do that, it's the next person's turn, and so on and so forth until the game comes to its end. The actions are basically the following. The green action, you're going to be able to play 2 cards. Play, I mean plant a card. It's going to be pay its cost and put it at a legal place in your tableau, in that 4x4 grid you're making. And then everyone else, and then you're going to draw 4 cards and choose one to keep and discard the others. Everyone else is going to plant 1 card, and if they want to, and draw 1 card. For this soil action here, composting or whatever it is, you're going to gain 5 soil, and soil is the money of the game. And you're also going to get 2 cards from the top of the deck, blindly drawn and put face down in what's called your compost pile. The compost is a resource you can use in the game, and it's worth a point for every card in that pile at the end of the game. So you're also netting yourself 2 points by doing this action, although you might spend that resource at some point to get other benefits. Everyone else will have a choice of either taking 2 soil or composting 2 cards from the top of the deck. The blue action, you're going to plant 6 sprouts. That means you're going to take 6 cubes and put them into spots where they fit on your board. Each plant has room for a different number of sprouts, from 0 to, I believe, 6. And then you're also getting 2 soil, and everyone else either gets 2 sprouts or 2 soil. And the final action, the yellow action, you're going to draw 4 cards and then place 2 growth. Again, the growth is these kind of tree-like tokens that go on these spots. Some plants don't have room for them, and some plants have room for lots of them. I mean, I think there's one that's as high as 8 is probably the highest I've seen. And then everyone else gets 2 cards or 2 growth. And then, of course, your special abilities. And it's just going to go so on, like this. It's going to go on and on until somebody triggers the end of the game. Now, there's a couple of exceptions to this. One is there are event cards. And the way event cards work is if you have an event card, there are these white cards, and they look a little bit like this one over here. And the event card will have this white thing, and you may play it pretty much at any time. You just say, I'm playing this event. It doesn't really ever affect anyone else. It's only going to affect you. And usually there's some sort of a cost and some sort of a bonus. In this case, discard 1 sprout and 2 growth in order to get, it looks like 3 cards. It's pretty small there. And then the card's also going to be worth a number of points from, I think, -4 to +2 is probably what I've seen, but I certainly haven't looked at every card. Yeah, so you're going to do that. The other sort of thing that we're dealing with is these goals. And I don't know if I'll be able to find them, but there's a board here. Oh, wow, look at that. There's a board with these 4 animal cards, these fauna cards, and each one will have some sort of an end or a trigger, and you're trying to complete these goals before anyone else. For example, this condor here wants you to have 20 cards in your hand. Once you do, you can play it. If you're the first one to do it, you'd put your token here. That's going to be worth 15 points at the end of the game. It's worth fewer points to people who complete it later. There's 4 of those. There are also some individual goals, end-game scoring goals. These aren't a race. It's just, for example, in this one, you'll get 6 points for each row in which all the cards have 1 common color. And there's a variety of these. You also have one that's just yours that's given to you at the start of the game. You have a special ability that you kind of start with, and a couple other things. But that's kind of it, right? I mean, you're going to play the game, you'll play a card, and you're trying ultimately to complete the goals, to get the most points, and to set up a system where you're making the actions better for yourself. So, for example, when someone does the red action, not only do you get the 2 soil, you also get 3 more soil, and you get to draw 4 cards into your hand, and you can pay discard 1 card, into your compost pile in order to get another 2 growth or something like that. You're really trying to set up these great combos, and that's where a lot of the fun of the game is. Anyway, at the end of the game, you're going to score all of your points, and scores are going to end up in the 100, somewhere between 100 and 300. I don't think I've ever seen a game with 300. I've also not seen a game with a score as low as 100, but you're going to be somewhere in that range, and whoever has the most points, well, will win. So let's talk about what makes the game special. A couple of things sort of jump out to me. One, this concept of building your engine and sort of having these turns that get progressively better each time you take one. That's really very satisfying. It's very satisfying to just to set something up and think, okay, I don't have time to focus on everything, but the game is rewarding me for doing yellow actions, so I want to make my yellow actions really good. And I want to have a lot of those growth things, those tree things on my cards, or I have a lot of cards that can get these sprouts on them, so I want to do lots of things that every time someone does that blue action, I get some, and every time someone does the red action, I get some. You're sort of setting yourself up. Or you might sort of develop an actual engine where, I draw a card here, then I use that card to trigger this, then I use that to trigger this, and I end up with, I've moved stuff around, but it's grown and multiplied, and I've just had a great turn. So it can be very satisfying to do that. Also, this game is largely simultaneous. Okay, people might take a little longer to run their machine than other people, but ultimately I select an action and then everybody does it. Now, I mean, my turn might be slightly longer or slightly shorter than yours, just based upon where I am in the game, but everyone's always involved. There's not really much downtime because even when it's not your turn, it's your turn. Another thing is that the 4 actions, it's the right number, right? They're different enough. They do slightly different things, but it's not like there's 17 different choices and you have to pick one from a menu of 17. No, you're picking one of 4 choices, and each choice is always good, okay? Look, it might be that you're out of soil or something and you can't play a card, but there are cards that cost 0. Maybe you're not. But it always feels like you have something to do. Something I didn't mention when I was talking about how the game works is that you can turn those sprouts, you can turn 3 of them in for a, 3 sprouts in for 2 soil, as many times as you like. So, even if you're out of money, as it were, you're still able to do something. So that's another interesting, feature of the game. You're really always involved. There's also lots of ways to score. I mean, there's so many different objectives that even if you kind of mess one up and say, look, I'm not going to deal with that, you still have lots of others that you're able to focus on and play with. And it can be very interesting. The game is also not too long. It seems a little shorter than it is. I think if you actually timed it, it might be about 45 minutes, but it really feels even shorter than that because you're always involved. Another good thing is that the rules are pretty simple. I've largely explained everything. There's some symbols to learn, but there's an okay reference on your player board. But it's not like there's a lot of rules overhead. It's just sort of how you play within this framework of rules that will make the game for you. Also, there's a lot of cards. I mean, in my copy here, I guess I can show. I have taken the card tray from one of the Wingspan expansions, I think the most recent one, and I've just filled it with the Earth cards for now. But there's got to be 400 cards in here. I haven't counted them, and I'm not sure it's listed in the rulebook, but there's a lot of cards, and they're all slightly different. There's also sort of you can learn a little bit about it if you want to read the flavor text. Another kind of special thing is that there's a really good solo mode. It's a very easy solo mode to run once you understand how it works. I will say the rules for the solo mode are a little lacking in the book, but once you figure it out, it's a really good, easy, manageable solo mode where really you just kind of take your turns and then give the solo player various bonuses that it earns during the game, and you're trying to get to the goals first, and it's just a good, easy solo mode. And the final kind of special thing is that there's a fantastic implementation on Board Game Arena where it will run all the math and numbers for you. It'll keep you following the rules, but you can sit down and play. You can play it as the solo mode against the computer player, or you can play with other people. So you're able to try the game pretty easily. So that's a lot of good things about this game. Uh, so where's the but? Well, there's a couple of not perfect things about this game. It's not quite perfect. Close, but not perfect. First of all, the symbols on the game are on the actual cards are pretty easy. There's only 10 maybe, and they largely make sense. But the symbols on the individual scoring cards can get a little bit hard to interpret. I wish that there were something that, like an explanation of, this card means this, just sort of a page or two of the rule book where it goes through all the different animals and says, here's what they do. That would have saved a little bit of the kind of interpretation. If you've played it a few times, you'll start to understand what they all mean, but it's not immediately obvious. Another thing is that the rules in the rule book are fine. They get the job done, but there are some things that, you can run into some corner cases pretty early on. So, and although it's not too bad, I do wish that they'd been just a little bit more thoughtful, maybe, at least for me. I found learning the rules from the rulebook was a little bit hard. Another thing is that the game can feel a little bit like a solitaire game, like a multiplayer solitaire. That's why it works so well solo, I guess. But it's a lot of kind of everybody staring intently at their boards while simultaneously doing things. Also, because of that, it's going to be hard for you to monitor what other people are doing. So if people don't, or it's possible for people to make a mistake and not really even realize it because of everything's happening so simultaneously. Also, it can be a little hard to keep track of all of the different scoring opportunities. And I think that's by design. I think that's a feature, not a bug. But because there's so much going on, it can be possible that you can inadvertently mess something up and it's too late at that point. Right. Anyway, I'm saying those largely just to give this as balanced a discussion as possible because I really like this game. I mean, this is going to get a 9 out of 10 for me. I've said before that it feels like a combination between Wingspan and Ares Expedition, where you're sort of building yourself up all these cards. It's got sort of that engine-y aspect from Wingspan. The sprouts are kind of like the eggs. And, every time you do an action, you're making it better and better for yourself. I don't know why Ares Expedition, other than this, I guess the action selection and sort of everyone doing the same thing at the same time. But both of those, if you like both of those, this is a great marriage between the two. If you only like one and don't like the other, you might still like Wingspan because although it shares some DNA with both of those games, it really stands on its own. So I think it's still worth trying, even if you didn't love either Wingspan or Ares Expedition. I still think you might like this. I think it will work well for anyone who likes nature type themes, and those seem to be popular. It's arguably the best nature themed game that's out right now. It's really fun to play, and like I mentioned earlier, you can try it for essentially free on Board Game Arena. So why not? I mean, there's really no reason not to try it. It's coming out and going to be widely available on Earth Day, which is I guess April 20th or 22nd. Or I should know the answer to that. Let's see. Earth Day, April 22nd is when they're planning on releasing it to the wide public. I do wish some of the components were a little bit nicer. I guess I would say I have the deluxe version, but I think in the base version some of the things are going to be discs instead of these nice stacky trees or things like that. It is what it is. But I really like Earth. I can see it potentially going higher than a 9. But for now, that's where I am. I've played it lots of times. I mean, I played it online. I played it in person. I played it at Dice Tower West a lot. I played it after and before. It's just one of my go-to games these days. It really just kind of hits me right where I need it to. And I think it will hit a lot of other people right there too. I think you'll really enjoy it, and I highly recommend it. Anyway, I've waxed on about Earth for a while now, and I guess it's time to end this episode of Wednesday Whimsy. So I'm going to wish you safe travels and courage when you need it, and I hope to see you back here. Well, I won't see you. I hope you'll join me again for another episode of Wednesday Whimsy next week. But for now, bye bye. Oh.